Step ashore.
I shall.
Hello there, and welcome back to the Desaturation Station. So, Disney live-action remakes. You know them, I know them. They are a constant source of terror and heartbreak among the film community. But they've had a recent surge in discussion in the popular consciousness this year. Everything from the announced remake of How to Train Your Dragon to the never-ending disaster that is news coming from the Lilo and Stitch remake, with talks ranging from the whitewashing and colorism in the casting to apparently replacing Agent Bubbles with another character, but then actually no, he's still in it, but then this also character is still here taking part of his role. It's confusing. My friend Zaji has a video talking about this more in depth if you're interested, but that's the general picture. As for me, I have talked about Disney live-action remakes on this channel before, with a video I released last October about the Little Mermaid trailer and how people were being a little silly in their reactions towards it. That video is almost 40 minutes long, and thus the only representation on my channel of Disney live-action remakes is 40 minutes of me defending one. Now, to be clear, I'm not above defending things that people generally don't like. 25% of my Disney Star Wars video is me passionately defending The Last Jedi, and I liked Quantumania. Come at me. Like, I'm not saying it's like necessarily the best or even really near the best of Marvel movies, but like, it seems weird that this is the one people singled out. Anyway, but this grace does not extend to Disney live-action remakes. Shocking and brave, I know. Disney live-action remakes not that good. I am like breaking new ground and forging a brilliant, untouched path here before with that statement. I'm not against remakes in general though. Some remakes are great. Little Shop of Horrors is a remake that's way better than the original, and I'm not just saying that because it's a musical and I'm a theater kid. Like another movie adaptation that does a lot with the original source material and is actually new and fresh take is Beetlejuice the Musical, which improves the source material in a lot of ways, and yeah, okay, I hear it now. In my defense, Shrek the Musical is a Broadway remake that I can confidently say is inferior to the original.
They tore my cotton granny dress and called me a hot and mess.
Sugar Plum Fairy!
Point is, remakes can be good if they do something original and new with the source material, which is usually why I don't like Disney live-action remakes. They essentially just do the same thing again, verbatim, but worse. They don't innovate or try to do something that is a serious deviation from the source material besides the obvious medium and quality shift. Which is why Peter Pan and Wendy, which just dropped on Disney Plus last week, is fascinating to me. But before we get to that, let's hear a word from our sponsor, you. If you want to help support the channel, consider joining my Patreon page. You get early access to videos, your name credited in the end screen, the ability to vote on future video topics, and more. Go to patreon.com/TSTTalks to learn more, or just click the first link in the description. Thank you so much to those who donate and to those who watch my content in general, and now, back to our regularly scheduled programming. Peter Pan and Wendy sticks out from a lot of other live-action Disney remakes in the sense that it actually does try to do something original, which I'll give it credit for. And it seems like a cool idea, right? Peter Pan is a classic, but it is definitely of its time. And there are some particular parts that haven't aged amazingly. So live-action reimagining for the modern era could be really interesting, and definitely isn't something that has been done before. Surely. This was my thought process hearing about this movie. I wasn't excited for it necessarily, but the project showed promise from the start. Then the director and main screenwriter of the project, David Lowery, came out with a statement that Tinkerbell doesn't glow in the movie because he can't figure out where the light would be coming from. We were doing so well. So I think it's time that we push that elephant out of the room. Despite being a somewhat more original take on the animated Disney film, this movie is not good. It's not the worst thing ever, and it's not even the worst live-action remake, but it's got a fundamental problem at its very core that prevents its success. But we'll get there. First, I want to talk about some of the more obvious superficial issues, starting with the aesthetic it's going for. As seems to be the case with many of the Disney live-action remakes, the color palette for this movie is incredibly desaturated to the point where the dominant color scheme could best be described as dried mud. All of the costuming feels as though it was done by a community theater production that only had a 30-year-old wardrobe full of moths to work with. Everything just looks dirty and ragged, and the general vibe of the movie is that of a dehydrated leaf. The visual dryness extends into other parts of the movie too, with an entire cast of stilted performances. Jude Law is definitely the best performance as Captain Hook, but that's not saying a whole lot. And trust me, we will get back to Captain Hook. And I hate saying this because I do not like knocking on child acting in movies, but it was all pretty rough in this movie. Most notably with the kid who played Peter Pan. I don't want to blame him for that though, because it really is on the casting director for putting the brunt of this movie's emotional beats on him when he's not quite capable yet. There are some tonal inconsistencies with the performances too, especially among the adult pirate actors.
And we can't have children in Neverland.
Seems a bit personal, but okay, thanks for sharing. Jude Law is clearly going for a more serious performance, but the rest of his crew, including Jim Gaffigan as Mr. Smee, are much more like their original cartoony selves and are clearly having a lot of fun with the roles. The pirates also have 2 very short musical numbers, which is weird for a more grounded take, and it's just a weird choice in general. Like, why didn't the kids get any songs? It's all very discordant. You see what I did there? Yeah. Yeah. The editing and direction are also super weird, largely because of the incredible range in quality. There are some genuinely really cool shots in this movie, and while a lot of the action choreography doesn't really excite me, it's still well choreographed. But on the other end of the spectrum, the editing is so goddamn weird. It ranges from large things like the pacing in this movie feeling incredibly off, almost like it started life as a 2.5 hour long movie but then had the middle hour cut out, to small things like perhaps the funniest transition ever put to screen.
Well, that was fun.
That pacing thing is no joke, by the way. When I was watching the movie, I legitimately thought I might have skipped through a chunk by accident. It was such a weird choice. The visual effects are also all over the place in this movie. There are so many examples that stick out to mind, like the crocodile looks pretty good, though maybe that's just because it's dark and they could hide their imperfections. But then there's the fact that Tinkerbell's wings don't look like they're attached to her half the time. Tinkerbell in general is pretty rough, despite the efforts of the actress playing her, who does a good job with what she's given, but you know. The other effect that stood out to me was when Peter was chasing his shadow. It's a scene that could have looked really cool in live action, and it almost does, until you see that he still has his shadow while he's chasing his shadow. Tiger Lily is in this movie. That's all I can really say about her portrayal for sure. She is definitely one of the characters of all time. Obviously, her portrayal and the portrayal of her kin in the original Peter Pan movie was quite problematic, to say the absolute least. So when I heard that she was going to be in this movie, I was curious to see how they would handle her. Well, they certainly handled her. I just can't comment on how well they handled her, since she's barely in this movie, and when she is, she barely does anything. It seems as though they solved her problematic portrayal by simply reducing her portrayal to have as few opportunities for her to actually do anything as possible. The most I think she does is heal Peter after he f***ing dies from Captain Hook shooting him in the chest. Hey guys, editing TSD here. I just wanted to issue a correction because in the video I said that Peter Pan dies because Captain Hook shoots him in the chest. That's actually not what happens. What actually happens is so much better. So what happens is that Captain Hook appears in his room and Peter Pan gets scared and he walks backwards slightly from that. And because of that, he falls off the edge and falls 3 stories down. And that's how he dies. So, it's not like he can fly or anything. Speaking of Captain Hook, this movie just completely messes him up to the point where he's unrecognizable. Literally, he doesn't look like Captain Hook at all. He's basically just a sad old man.
Most days I hate that word. Toby! Why does it make me feel so?
I couldn't say. Oh, it's just something my mother sings us.
Your who?
My mother.
Yes, of course.
Don't worry, James. Just think happy thoughts.
Oh. Peter. I haven't got any.
Okay, Debbie Downer, maybe you should tone it down a notch. So the thing you have to understand about me before we talk about this is that I have a bias, which I'll explain more in detail later, but let's just say that Captain Hook is like one of my favorite camp villains ever. He's just so goofy and flamboyant and over the top, and they turned him into a serious character with a tragic backstory. The man's life mission is to murder a child. He doesn't need a tragic backstory. But boy oh boy does he get one in this movie, and it's wild. Essentially, it's revealed that Hook was the first Lost Boy, and that he and Peter Pan were best friends. But then everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. But then everything changed when one day, Captain Hook started missing his mom. And then upon finding this out, Peter kicked him out of Neverland and left him to fend for himself. Jesus Christ, Peter, what the hell is wrong with you? I might be on Hook's side here. That's pretty despicable. Oh, and in case you were wondering, the solution to this conflict is just for Peter to apologize to Hook. Hook survives. He's not eaten by the crocodile. The crocodile is in one scene early on and then never shows up again. There's absolutely no payoff to that setup. Dear God, this movie is stupid. For the last however many minutes, I've been talking in no particular order about the various things that bothered me, but I do have a larger point. I think there's a fundamental reason why this movie doesn't work. A reason that explains why the very premise and mindset behind this movie was, in a word, flawed. And believe it or not, it all comes back to that quote about Tinkerbell glowing not making any sense. Because here's the thing about David Lowery. He is not a bad filmmaker. This is the guy who made The Green Knight and who made the Pete's Dragon remake, which is one of the only good live-action Disney remakes that actually improves upon the source material. Peter Pan and Wendy wasn't bad because of incompetence, it was because of what it was trying to be. A grounded Peter Pan story. It was always going to fail because that premise just doesn't really work, or at least doesn't really work without a significant amount of talent and thought put into it. Because think about it. What is it about Peter Pan that's appealing? The story of Peter Pan is meant to be a fantasy, a world where kids go and have fun adventures and win with nothing but happy thoughts and the power of their imagination. There's fairies, magical food, mermaids, flying. It's meant to be this simple dream world where you never grow up. The conflict of Neverland is not realistic struggles and complex moral structures. It's the fact that you have to leave Neverland, leave that childish fantasy if you want to mature. But at the same time, you learn to bring the magic of Neverland into your adult life, so you don't lose sight of what's important and what it's like to be a kid. Neverland itself is extreme fantasy, so trying to retell it with complex villains and a desaturated color scheme and all of that doesn't really work as a retelling of the Peter Pan story. Or at least it doesn't in this case because they don't commit to the bit. Sure, the world is grayer and dirtier and Captain Hook has a tragic backstory, but the power of imagination still turns logs into telescopes and there's still a ticking crocodile. Until there isn't, and those are just forgotten as well. The problem with telling a complicated Peter Pan story is that if you don't commit to it, then the movie gets pulled in two different directions. There's discordance between the tone of performances of different actors because they don't have a unified vision. There's effort put into making the visuals desaturated and the costuming more realistic, but at the same time the budget is stretched the other way to try and make a convincing looking fairy. There's Captain Hook, who is simultaneously this villain who wants to unremorsefully murder children, while at the same time attempting to be this sympathetic sad sack who just needs a friend and a bit of therapy. So many of the movie's problems stem from this, shall we say, internal conflict. This is a story that tries to be two different things, succeeds at neither, and what we're left with is an empty movie that goes through the motions of the original story enough to retain Disney's copyrighted imagery, but doesn't do enough to justify its own existence. You know what is a great live-action follow-up to the Peter Pan story? Hook, starring Robin Williams and Dustin Hoffman. I may be biased because I grew up watching this movie, and believe me, I know it has issues, but you know what it does well? It commits to the bit. Remember what I said about loving Captain Hook as a camp villain? This movie is why. It keeps Captain Hook as this kooky, flamboyant, and over-the-top villain with a ridiculous voice and an incredibly elaborate wardrobe, elevating his original charm 100-fold. It also still has Neverland as this wild and imaginative place. But at the same time, it keeps the conflict realistic by making it between the relationships between the people in real life. It also helps that it's like, super camp, guys. I might be banned from using that word if I keep going down this route. I guess my main point in all this is that I really respect what Peter Pan and Wendy is going for. I really do. It's a hell of a better sentiment than just redoing an old animated movie basically word for word with an extra hour of fluff added in along with an original song so it can qualify for an Oscar. But it's such a weird premise on a stretched budget with confusing plot / character choices and a generally boring and uninteresting presentation. It's just a bit of a mess, and it sucks because it really didn't have to be. It is a fascinating failure. Thank you so much for watching this video. That got a bit more heated and introspective than I thought it would be going into a video about a Disney live-action remake. It was fun though. I love doing stuff that surprises me like this. Feel free to check out my socials, including my community Discord server and my letterbox, all of which are linked down below, along with my aforementioned Patreon. If you can and want to donate, please feel free to do so. And if not, you can still support the channel by liking the video, commenting with any thoughts you may or may not have had, sharing with anyone you think might like it, or just subscribing because I'm so darn peachy keen. Peachy keen, yeah. Let's go with that. I sincerely hope that I made your day just that little bit better. And I guess I'll see you in the next video. Bye.
But she is a fairy.